Haynes, and I'm the featured artist here for July at the New Zone Gallery in downtown Eugene. And I have been an artist for my whole life. I grew up in the Midwest and came out here to Oregon about 7 years ago now, and I've loved living here. It's just a fantastic place to be, and I've really had a great new kind of transformation in how I create my art since I've moved to Eugene especially. And so I do what I call neural magic. It's a combination of a bunch of different practices, and ultimately what they allow me to do is to change my mind about things. And I have such a good time doing this, and I love sharing it with folks because I feel like, especially these days, it's really a good thing to learn that we can change our minds about things. You know, it's a beautiful thing. And so I started about 2.5 years ago with doing this practice, and that began out of a 9-day darkness retreat. So I spent 9 days in total darkness, and when I came out, I was introduced to the neurographic style of drawing, and my brain just lit on fire with it. So I've just had a wonderful time experimenting and developing what I do, and I work in a lot of different media, as you'll see, so it's really a fun time. So I had a wonderful time in that dark room. It doesn't seem like something that you might have a good time in, but after a few days of really deep rest, I had an opportunity to really connect with myself in a different way. It really transformed, you know, how I connect to my body, how I feel about my image. You know, it disconnected me from a lot of the image obsession that we tend to have in our culture, especially these days. And it is an odd thing, I suppose, as a visual artist to deprive myself of the visual, you know, spectrum. But in truth, you know, I don't think of myself only as a visual artist. I think that, well, I consider myself a spiritual archaeologist, actually, that it's my responsibility during my lifetime to really connect to my ancestry and do all I can to heal the epigenetic wounding, all of the things that I carry in my lineage that have been unresolved throughout all of these years. And so that's been my focus, and my art is really just a reflection of that. It's kind of a record of the healing process. And so when I got introduced to neurographic drawing, what I experienced was, it was like the lights really did come on. You know, it was an opportunity to really connect sort of the ways that I'm different from other folks anyway. I have very poor low vision by nature, and so I see the world, without these, I see the world very abstractly. Everything sort of blends together and becomes part of, you know, a unity consciousness, if you will, which is the title of one of my pieces. And it just, you know, I've had difficulty with my hearing as a child, difficulty with, you know, different kinds of sensory inputs. And so I think that there is sort of a uniqueness to the way that I connect to the visual world and also to music. You know, I was a musician for a long time, so I've always been a creative person. And my feeling is that, you know, every person is an artist. Every person has a creative spark, a reason for being here that connects them to whatever it is that's brought us all together in this space and in this time. And especially with everything that's going on, you know, with climate change and, you know, the environment, I think the more that we can talk about things earnestly, honestly, and with, you know, grace towards one another, the better off we are with, you know, potentially finding solutions. So for me, this personal practice is a way for me to find solutions for my personal life, for the things that cause me strife and grief, and also, you know, gives me a lot more space to be present with people who maybe need someone to give them a listening ear, or, you know, spend some time reflecting what's going on in their world, you know, because we're all in our own individual experiences of reality, but we're all going through the same stuff ultimately, you know, and in a lifetime, I don't think it's unusual for us to have grievous moments or difficulty, you know, with our experiences. And maybe we need more rest, and maybe we need to sit in a dark room for a while and be alone and really think about, like, what is all of this that I'm doing? Because, you know, before there was light, there was dark, and we all ultimately come from that space, but we have this fear of it, this trepidation about, not being able to visualize our world. I've had a lot of people ask me, like, how did you go to the bathroom? It's like, how do you go to the bathroom in the middle of the night? How do blind people do it? And that's a lot of what I like to think about, is the different ways that we perceive the world, the different ways we experience the world, how disability might change, our reality, how really superb ability in some way can change our reality, and what kind of access we have based on, things that are kind of imposed by our society, like economics. So, as somebody who's kind of always been a little bit in poverty, that's also, an aspect to getting, the privilege of spending 9 days in total darkness. I've had people reflect to me like, oh, lucky for you that you had that time. And, the truth is I was unemployed and I was broke, and it was a place that I could go that was on a sliding scale. And, I was very lucky. And I feel like, especially here in Eugene and in Oregon in general, what I have found is a lot of support towards, moving in a more sustainable and more nourishing kind of way. And being here at the New Zone, I've really gotten to experience a lot of that too. It feels like, this is a truly supportive artistic community that I have a real privilege of getting to be a part of. And I want to encourage folks to join us here. We do our Zone for All shows. We've got another one coming up soon, and I'd love to see every local artist put something on the wall here, or display something on a stand, because it's a wonderful opportunity to get to connect to each other. And we artists, we're the kind of people who are thinking about, how do we remake the world? How do we change what we're experiencing and what we see? How do we help each other? And I love getting to be a part of that here. So this piece is called Calm Down. This is the earliest work that is in this show. It was actually started in 2019 and completed in 2020. And it definitely is an eye catcher. People always have a comment. Often I get the question, they read the text and they say, well, why not? And my answer is that we certainly can all be, but we often receive a diagnosis for something that is actually rooted in a systemic problem, something that has been broken within our structure. And so as you read through all of the text inside of the letters, what you find are diagnoses and conditions that pathologize something that is not necessarily individual. And as I got to the end of the piece, I started to write things like, is it my brain that's broken or just my heart, And you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to do more than just exist. You are here to live. And, together we really can come up with solutions. But first noticing that maybe it's not my brain that's broken. Maybe it's my heart, and I need to grieve over that and give that some space. So speaking of grief, this piece is called Grief is a Portal, The Way Out is Through. And this piece was also produced in 2020. So obviously we were at the beginning of what was going to be a long pandemic, and one that has been deadly for more people than we probably know, and has been mass disabling for even more people. And it's a grievous event. And every day there are grievous events. There are car accidents, there are illnesses, people die, people get sick, all kinds of things happen. And we often, in our society these days, don't give enough space to that grief. That's my opinion, and that's why I painted this piece. It was inspired by learning that Kubler-Ross, who created the original 5 stages of grief, had discovered that there was a 6th stage, which was meaning. And so I had heard many times in the recovery community, that you got to get through it to get to it, right? And so my understanding of that kind of changed as I learned that information and started thinking about how we go through these stages of grief ultimately to reach meaning together, or alone. And of course, there is no one order or direction for those stages to be experienced in, and sometimes you find meaning and then you go back into denial. It's part of human condition that we don't follow a straight path, and we don't always have, a direct line to whatever it is that we're trying to get to, because ultimately it's not really always our choice. But I am very happy with how this piece turned out, and I hope that it gives people some peace and some acknowledgement that, it's okay to grieve, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel all those feelings. Those are all normal things. And this piece is called Make Known the Mystery. This is my most recently completed work, which was finished about 2 weeks ago. And it is a 30 by 30 inch painting done in acrylic. All of the paintings that I've featured so far with you have been acrylic. And I like acrylic because I'm a little impatient, so I like it when things dry quickly. So this is definitely a piece that was about connecting to my ancestry and to all our shared ancestry. So I started thinking about the original painters, right? The very first Aboriginal painters who walked the earth and put their handprints up on caves. And so this painting was entirely painted with fingerprints, handprints. And then I used, I have a technique, special technique that I like to use where I unify a condom with an icing tip, which gives me a lot of control, and I can have very fine points. And I'll use that then to produce this sort of, stained glass effect, because I was also definitely thinking about a rose window, the stained glass that you see in big cathedrals. A lot of my work is about trying to connect, our everyday lives to something more holy, something more sacred, to really finding those moments in ourselves in our everyday existence. And so, my hope is that someday this will find its home and somebody will get an opportunity to feel like, they're making their space a little more sacred for themselves.